Knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable, I think just accept the fact that, hey, I need to do this. I know it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to get better over time, and just start doing it. If you don't make that decision to start one day, time is going to pass and you're not going to start doing anything and you're not going to start doing any changes that you need. And when you look back, it's going to be time would have passed, a lot of time maybe. And it's okay, I lost my opportunity. I need to start again. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets.
Our featured speaker today is an MBA MS in data science, dual degree candidate at the Darden School of Business and the School of Data Science of the University of Virginia, who is passionate about using advanced analytics to solve complex business problems. Mauricio, it's a great pleasure to have you as our featured guest today. Thanks so much for being willing to share your journey with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have you in this conversation.
So can you start us off by telling us a bit about your experience growing up and about some of the early life events and mentors that influenced your personal and professional development?
One person that has had a lot of influence on me on how I think and everything is my dad. I remember that when I was a little kid, sometimes don't work and I would try to force things to work. And my dad would tell me, hey, if something is, hard and it's not like fitting, it's because there's something not working. I need to figure out what's not working. So I would try to figure out, okay, what's not working with this toy. And I think that in that way, he instilled in me this curiosity to understand how things work. And I've carried that curiosity along my life and in my work and in everything I do. And I think part of the reason why I'm doing also the dual degree, not only the MBA, but also the data science master's.
Cool. And why data science? It's something like you want to pursue the truth behind business decisions and to understand what is the biggest thing that made you choose like this field.
It's a funny story because I studied industrial engineering, and as an engineer, I took a bunch of statistics classes, and I really hated those classes back in college. I thought they were very theoretical, and I couldn't think myself applying statistics to real life problems, because the problems that I was practicing with were you're with two friends and you have a bag with 5 balls, two are black, three are red. What's the probability that you get a red ball? It's like, I'm not gonna do that in real life.
Yeah, I had those classes too. Yeah, it's crazy.
And to be honest, when something was very theoretical for me, it wasn't interesting at all and I wasn't engaged. But it wasn't until I get to my second internship in a consulting firm that I learned that it was useful. And I learned this because we were working on a value proposition development project. And part of developing the value proposition was segmenting the market. And to segment the market, we were hiring a third party that was using something that we call structural equation modeling to understand the segments that existed and what was driving the decision making in each segment. And I started asking around the firm how it worked, and nobody could tell me exactly how it works. So my last semester of college, I decided to take a class on predictive analytics, and that's where everything clicked. And I thought, okay, this is actually very helpful. And I took that class, and really I didn't use anything from that class probably until 4 years later, where I changed consulting firm and I started working more on commercial strategy projects. And commercial strategy projects are usually dealing with the customer. And when you deal with customers, you have some kind of analytics you need to do. And really the first question where I went back to those learning from my predictive analytics class was when I was working with a bank and we had done a survey to test a product. And we had this prototype of product, of like banking product that we wanted to develop. And we told the bank, hey, we want to retest this product, this prototype with the same customers that we spoke before. And they told them, well, a policy of the bank, you cannot talk with the same customer within 6 months or something like that, because we don't want to affect the customer experience. So the question was, okay, how do we test this product? Because we knew that in the market, there was about 30% of the market and of the customers were very price driven. And the idea of the product was, how do we differentiate ourselves without playing on price? We chose randomly our customers. 30% of them would tell us, hey, I prefer price. But we wouldn't know if it's because they're really price driven or if because they don't like the product. So I got my material from that class and I ran a simple model to try to predict based on buying behavior if they were or not price driven customers. And we ended up having a good testing, a very good testing, and the product was a good product. People loved the product. And that was my really first exposure of implementing these kind of things. From that moment onward, I started seeing the opportunity to do some advanced analytics on each of my projects. So when I was thinking about doing my MBA, it felt very natural for me to think, okay, let's do the MBA, but also master's in data science. And that's how I get to doing the master's in data science too.
That's really interesting. I really enjoy hearing about like how you went from you were like, oh, this is useless to, oh, I can see how now this sort of really applies, and then really pursuing it further. I think that's such an interesting little journey, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us. You obviously hinted at your strategy consulting work, which I think has been across 4 different countries. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I was based in Peru, worked for companies in Colombia, in Ecuador, Mexico, or Peru. And then in the summer, I was here in the US also.
Wow. I mean, that has to give you quite a unique perspective on how these businesses are functioning, right? And what is the same and what is different about the strategy and the approach to them. Would you mind giving us a little bit of explanation of what strategy consulting is as a whole and what lessons or learnings you saw when working with these different countries?
The best way I've found of explaining what consulting is thinking of a doctor. So if you're a person and you're not feeling well, you go to a doctor and the doctor tells you, hey, it's going to ask you a bunch of questions and diagnose you until, hey, this is going wrong with you. Consultants do the same thing, but for companies. When companies are not feeling very well, that could be they're losing market share, they are losing profitability, they are losing clients, maybe they're seeing an increase in cost. They go to a consultant and the consultant will try to help them. Of course, they can do it in-house. It depends on what is the motivation for going to the consultant, because typically you would have 3 kind of cases. You would have cases where the client doesn't know what to do and how to do it, and they would hire a consultant to help them. The other one would be client knows what to do and what is going on. They don't have enough capability to do it. There's not enough people in the company to do it because they're working on other things. And the third one would be they know what to do. They have the people to do it, but maybe they need to sell this idea to like the board or the CEO. And usually when a third party comes in and say it, for some reason, they can in a better way than someone within the company saying it. So it's a combination of these things that determine what a consultant does. Strategy is more about thinking the broader problems of the company. How do you position the company? How do you gain market share? How do you improve your profits? Which is a little bit different than, let's say, more operational consulting, which is focused more on how do you develop and deploy solutions. So for example, how do you design a new distribution network, right? Which is consulting also, but it's more on the operational side of consulting. Actually, I found that across countries, companies are very similar. I would say and that was a surprise for me. I would say that what changes the most is the scale at which companies operate. For example, I have been mostly working in Peru. In Peru, a big company is a company that sells $500 million or maybe $600, $700 million. If you go to Ecuador, you're going to find very big companies, leading companies in the market that sell maybe $150, $200 million because it's a significantly smaller country. And also the availability of data that the country has is very different. So for example, in Peru, we usually have, every year we have a survey, statistics department of Peru does to understand how the consumer and how the people are moving, what they're expending money on, how much they're earning, where they're shopping, etc. In Ecuador, that's maybe once every 10 years. So the availability of data that you have to work with is very different. If you go to Colombia or Mexico, everything is significantly bigger. If you come here to the US, everything is even bigger. A big company. So this summer I was working with a company that was, I think, was selling like 300 billion, or it was a huge company. We were trying to liberate cash flow for the company, and we were talking about liberating $1 billion in cash flow. Like that's bigger than most companies in Peru. And that was just cash flow. Yeah, for me, that difference between countries, of course, there are culture differences in how you work. Company-wise, I would say it's the scale and the availability of data that you have. Every company across every country, I would think, has data problems. Very hard to find a company that has really good data. I have experienced this. Well, in Peru, I thought that Ecuador has the same problem. Colombia has the same problem. I would say Mexico also. And here in the US, I was surprised to see that. But with one client that I was working with this summer, he also had a lot of data issues.
Yeah, I can relate so much with your story, man, because I've been working with consulting since ever, like forever. And the data is usually bad when it's good. When you work a lot to get in the data and you show it to the decision makers or whoever hired you to do the job, sometimes they don't know what to do with that. Even if you show what they have to do, they still don't do it, or they are not able to understand it, or there are a lot of difficulties in this job. And so can you share with us like what kind of difficulties that you had with working with consulting? Because I've been there and yeah, I've seen it. You go to the bottom of it, you get to the truth with real data, with everything, and still the managers, the directors are making bad decisions. They don't want to look at your data because it shows different than their gut feeling. And they're and it's a big challenge to be like, you got to trust me. I'm showing these numbers. This is, I think it involves a lot of communication skills and stuff. Also, it's not just an analytical job. It's also, you said it's like you're a doctor and the analytics would be like an exam, like something that a person like a blood test or something. But when it comes to dealing with the managers and the directors, it feels like you're working with psychology. So how do you feel about that? What kind of challenge did you have?
I totally agree with what you said. I think that what's technically optimal solution is very different from a practically optimal solution. As you said, that's because when you present data to people, people don't relate usually to the data. The company has a problem and you've been hard to solve that problem, but I think that the key is understanding what the problem of the person that hired you is, also what they're worried about. That's when you start making progress, I would say. It happened to me that we were hired to redesign the route to market of an aquaculture company. And the part of optimizing the route to market is changing the customer segmentation that the company has. So they're usually big stake projects. We presented an optimal customer segmentation, and we faced a lot of pushback from our sponsor, which was a report from the CEO. And what he was going to say, oh yeah, I don't know if this is going to work. Like this doesn't make sense with what I know from the market. If you're very technical, it's very frustrating. Experience this kind of pushback. But the thing is that, and you will see this usually if you go higher up in the consulting organization, partners are very skilled at understanding why that person is doing that. The sooner you learn how to do that, it's gonna make your job easier. Because usually when they're pushing back, it's not because they're not buying your solution, because they're worried about something. And the way we approached this was we had a conversation with this VP. We said, hey, what are you worried about? Are you not liking the segmentation? What are you not liking about the segmentation? And when we started having this very open conversation, like being vulnerable to, hey, give me feedback on the work we're doing because we want this to be something that you can work with. He started saying that, hey, this would be the third time we're changing our segmentation. The other times where we changed our segmentation, it didn't work. So what makes you think that this time it will work? It wasn't a problem with that technical part of the work that we were doing, but it was more of what was in the back of his head thinking, hey, what if this fails again? I cannot afford another failure at this time. So that's when you start saying, okay, now it makes sense. Let's try to make this work. Okay, let's get other people involved. Okay, who do you want to get involved to validate that this segmentation makes sense? Oh, we should get involved the people from sales. We should get involved the people from logistics. We should get involved the technical people. So we started getting involved of all of these different teams in the organization, and they started validating our solution. We ultimately made some small changes. We're using a decision tree to classify the segments and the customers. We ended up sacrificing, let's say, optimality, make it a little bit simpler, the model. And it was 90% there, 80% there, the segmentation. It was better than what they had. It was a segmentation model that everybody understood and that everybody was buying into it. And that's a big change. So if usually you need to sacrifice a little bit of technical optimality, let's say, and to make it less complex, so the organization can buy into this solution. From my perspective, it's not doing a sacrifice that you're doing, because something that happens very often in consulting is that you do very nice analysis, you prepare a PowerPoint deck, and that deck goes into a bin and nobody opens that.
Oh yeah.
So if you can prevent that from happening to actually help your client, that's a big step forward. And really, that's the difference between a good consulting firm or a good consulting team and an amazing consulting team. If they really get to change in mindset and make people start changing, that's going to be game changing for the company.
Yeah, I guess like I've been studying a lot about it, and in my experience, the thing is also as a consultant, you have to be a leader. You have to be, because people are afraid of death and change. That's the things people are afraid of. But if they want to have better numbers, they have to change sometimes. And sometimes you have to ask questions. They're not that comfortable. And some entrepreneurs or some managers, they are in the not comfortable comfort zone. That's what I call it, because it's not comfortable, because there are problems. If they hired you, they have problems, but still they don't want to change anything because they're in the comfort zone. They've been doing this for 10, 20 years, and they're like, you get all the data, you get analysis on what the market wants or what the clients are giving feedback or how they're behaving in the sense of what they're buying, or and still sometimes it's hard to convince. So I guess to be a really good consultant, you have to know the data, the analytical part, and also the people skills are really important. Yeah, I admire your answer, because that's exactly what I was thinking. That you told me, like, oh, you have this other more experienced consultants that they're good with that, like with discussing with the management and the people. So yeah, I guess it was a really nice answer, actually.
I did want to ask a little bit change of shift. You've gone back to school for your MBA in data analytics. I think I know a couple of people who have been doing similar things or have been at least weighing the pros and cons. How did you know this was right for you?
So on one hand, I think it was something that I always wanted to do. It was something that as I was growing up, my parents always told me, hey, you should think of getting a master's degree and you should think of doing it like not in Peru, like outside of Peru. So you get the international experience. Also going into the consulting industry is something that you're expected to do. Consulting is an industry where you're expected to get your MBA. It's changing slowly. Still, I wouldn't say there's the pressure, but that's what you're expected to do. And also, I wanted to have the experience of working here in the US, probably one of the easiest ways, let's say, of getting to the US and working here in a corporate environment without having the citizenship of the US is getting a master's degree here, an MBA or a master's degree, and being hired by a company that hires international people. So those kind of things determine that this is what I want to do and this is the time.
Oh yeah, I can relate with that a lot, because I'm not from America, as you can see by my accent. Or I applied to MBAs in the US in the past, like 2015, probably. I've been like, I was already graduated for 5 years, and my thought was that I can get my master's degrees and be a candidate to work with a big corporation or work with Google, whatever, because I've been working with tech for a long time. There's a really good strategy to get in the front door of a country like the United States. You have to have a purpose. You just don't go there to, yay, I'm a tourist and I want to be hired. That doesn't work. And you're not going to find a job in a top corporation doing this. So when you go back to school, it's not just that you're gonna using this strategy, right? But it's you're gonna learn a lot as well, and you're gonna have a really great network of people that it's gonna be awesome. I don't have this purpose anymore of having a master's degree or studying in the U.S. because when I applied, I had a health condition that I just couldn't go. And now I'm already established here. So I gave up on that idea, but I totally get it. It's a great strategy to have and to access a market and to be part of it without too much trouble, let's say. And I've been back to school again in a different kind of area because I studied advertising and then I specialized on analytics, but never in a way that I just learned by doing it for so much long, working with marketing and stuff. So I went back to school to study engineering. It's the opposite of what you've done. You were on engineering and then you went to analytics. So I can also relate with that. And it's funny to hear your story and be so related with it. And as an entrepreneur, sometimes we know what is wrong with our company and we know what we have to do, but we still don't do it. So what kind of advice do you have for people like me? They have the company, they know, but still they can't execute the change. I see when you take a decision like this, okay, I'm going to leave like my comfort zone. I'm going to study abroad. That's a strategy to executing. And you actually did it. So as an entrepreneur, I wanted to know what the process, how it was for you and what advice you can give for me and for other people that they want to make change. They know what they have to do, but still miss that impulse. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best person to give advice to entrepreneurs. I'm the one aiming for corporate, which is a very safe job. But trying to relate to a personal experience, when I arrived here to Darden, so for context, Darden is an MBA that it has the fame here in the US for being very rigorous academically. This rigorousness comes from the case method. When you're evaluated, 40% of your grade is from what you say in class. So you need to be engaged in class. I need to speak up in class. And at first, when I just arrived here, I thought, oh, yeah, I'm going to be fine with participating in class. When you sit in class, you're sitting with 70 other people that you don't know. If you're not very, I don't know if the word is shy, but if I'm in a big group environment, I usually tend to don't speak that much. When classes started, I didn't start participating as much as I wanted to. When I finished my first quarter, here is on a quarter base, just 2 months, I was doing very well on the final exams, which was what I knew. But on the speaking part and the participation side, I was doing average. I wasn't doing great. And it hurt because I could be doing much better if I was speaking more. Because I know what we're doing. I know the things that we're talking about in class. It's just that I need to get that courage to raise my hand and say something. So for this, I think it was second or third quarter, I said, okay, I know this is gonna be uncomfortable, but I need to speak every class. Like every single class, I'm gonna raise my hand. I'm gonna speak, and it's gonna be that. Like one time I raise my hand and I speak. No, if I have something to say, I'm gonna raise my hand, and that's what I did. What I forced myself to do. And to be honest, the first week, maybe 2 weeks, were extremely uncomfortable for me. But then it started getting easier. The professor started noticing that hey, I was speaking and I was adding value to the class. And it got to a point where professors weren't even calling me because I was good with participation and they needed to give the opportunity to someone else. So my advice would be, and this is a very safe environment where I was doing this, but knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable, I think just accept the fact that, hey, I need to do this. I know it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to get better over time and just start doing it. If you don't make that decision to start one day, time is going to pass and you're not going to start doing anything and you're not going to start doing any changes that you need. And when you look back, it's going to be time would have passed, a lot of time maybe. And it's okay, I lost my opportunity. I need to start again. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets. In my experience, it was one thing to start at the beginning of the quarter, feeling uncomfortable, than trying to participate more heavily towards the mid of the quarter where everybody was participating more. So yeah, I think that would be my advice. Accept that it's going to be uncomfortable. It's needed.
Absolutely. There's a saying I've heard that's first thing in the morning, you need to eat a frog. And it's not obviously actually eat a frog, but it's like the earlier you do something that's uncomfortable, the more quickly you'll get comfortable with it and able to do it more often if that's something you need to do more often, right? And I think that's such a good point because for, I would say, any major level of success, any entrepreneurship journey, any even in personal situations, you have to be able to put yourself in uncomfortable situations in order to grow and in order to improve whatever the thing you're trying to change is. And so I think that's a very good idea where you decided, this is it. I'm just going to force myself to talk, to put my hand up and say something in every class, and actually making yourself do that. I think that's a really good way of going about it.
Hi there. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you mind leaving us a review, a like, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? Thanks so much. That really helps our reach. The Founders Voyage podcast is now proudly sponsored by VidOps. Kane at VidOps has been taking care of our editing since early 2024. He works efficiently, and I'm sure you'll agree that he does a great job. Thank you to VidOps for helping bring this podcast to life. If you want the same great support we're getting for your podcast, or you need help with video, photography, or animation, you can get 10% off at vidops.io using our referral code Voyage. That's vidops.io, referral code Voyage. Now back to the show.
Now, we've talked a bit about what you've done in the past, and we've talked a little bit about where you are at the moment. And I know you said your aim is more corporate, and totally understand that. But what I would like to ask is a little bit about, if you could go into, say, the end of your degree, you could go into any direction, what would you want to be working on, or where would you want to go?
Where I would really want to work is as a Formula One strategist. So in Formula One, everyone is excited about the drivers. Behind the drivers, there's a big team of people helping them figure out the best strategy. So the driver's executing on that, but there's a team of engineers that is constantly analyzing what the rest of the teams are doing and are simulating, okay, what would happen if, I don't know, there's a safety car right now? What would happen if there's an accident? What would happen if we stop the race right now? What's my decision in that moment? And that's what the F1 strategists do. They are the ones in charge of analyzing all of this data that is generated from Formula One and simulate, because they generate simulations constantly, like during the race. And they have a plan of what to do in each moment of the race. That would be my dream job. Probably I'm not going to do that. It's extremely technical, and I think I'm a little bit older to start there. but so I'm probably going to end up doing consulting, which I really love. I really enjoy. Trying to move from more strategy consulting to more advanced analytics consulting within a strategy firm. I'm still applying the analytics tools to answer strategic questions instead of deploying models.
That's so interesting, man. I'm actually going to the F1 that we have here in Interlagos.
Oh,
Later
nice.
this year. Yeah, I love Formula One. So I didn't expect you to say anything about this. It's a surprise for me, because I've been coming to the podcast for a long time and I never heard about F1 here. It's the first time. And it's something I'm really passionate about. It's cars. What I'm doing, I'm studying car engineering. I don't know in English because I'm studying in a Brazilian university, but it's engineering and also electronical engineering at the same time, mechanical and electronic at the same time. We call it mechatronica. I don't know how it's called in English. So, but anyways, I'm studying that just because I like it. I don't see myself as having a business fixing cars or building them, or, maybe I work for Elon on Tesla, maybe. I don't know. But okay, Spencer just sent me here. It's mechatronics. Perfect. It's a passion. And I totally relate with you. I work with consulting. I guess like when you like something, you could work with that, not on an actual F1 team. Like you could have totally like the social media thing. It's really huge, like in money, if you think about it. There's a lack. I follow some people from Brazil and from United States, or even other United Kingdom and Europe. They have YouTube channels on F1. It's really interesting to see how many views these guys get. And maybe you cannot work with a team, but you could also like work with analysis of a race, or how the pilots are behaving, how the team is behaving, how the car is doing. Maybe like after you're done with consulting, and you could start something like this, like people want to hear from people that understand what they're talking about. That's what I see now. It's my world. But yeah, I really get passion, and it's really nice to see that behind all that team, there's an analytical team helping like them to make the right decisions. And it feels like F1, it feels like it's the team. It's just like a team in a startup or in a company. You say that you don't feel comfortable giving advice for entrepreneurs, but I feel that you already are. Maybe you're entrepreneur. So you work for a company, but it's still you have the vision. I see that because you're telling about being uncomfortable. You're telling about having the data to take the right decisions and to help the team. This is a view of a leader. This is a view of an entrepreneur, in my understanding. Do you ever feel like starting your own thing in the future, or that something never like came through your mind? What do you think about it?
I've actually started two businesses. One when I was 15 years old. I started, so when I was in high school and middle school, I played field hockey in Peru. There was no place to get equipment for field hockey. So I started importing equipment for hockey players. And then when I was 20, I became distributor brand Momo Italy. It's an automotive parts brand with two of my best friends. That was a total failure, that business. The other one was good. But now, so my family owns a small business in Peru. Maybe the plan is that I take charge of the business after some years working here in the US. And probably that would be my entrepreneurial side, taking charge of the family business. Something that I've been thinking of. It's not something that I'm sure that I want to do, but I think that there's a lot of disconnect between strategy consulting and analytics. I think that people see analytics, like people in analytics see consulting as something very high level and without impact maybe. And people in consulting see analytics as something that's going into too much detail without understanding the big picture. I think that there is an opportunity to merge these two worlds and use analytics to inform better strategies. I think that some consulting firms are starting to do that, but still I would say that even within the teams, there may be some differences. But I think that's a trend. Start merging these worlds. And probably I would say the leading consulting firms are working towards that. I think it will be hard for me to compete with those.
Business strategy and analytics are so hard to sell together because I've been trying to do that since 2016 and I totally get it. It's hard to compete. Sometimes people fire you. The finance guy for my company, I was like, this client fire us, so cancel all the invoices, but they will be back in 3 months. And he said, how do you know that? I just know it because they're hired a different company that only looks at analytics. They don't look at its strategy and they're going to fail. 2 months, they came back and re-signed with us. So there's a lot of value in that, but it's hard to sell to the clients actually. So I totally get what you're saying.
It's a very good point. I am surprised you didn't mention that you'd started two businesses when Daniel first asked you about your experiences growing up. That's so interesting that when you were 15, you started your first business. I think that shows like you have that go-getter leadership attitude, which will be beneficial for you, obviously, in entrepreneurship, but also in more corporate roles where corporate roles tend to be, if you do have that sort of leadership, can innovate and imagine and see other ways of thinking about what's being worked on. I think that's hugely beneficial. I think that's such a cool trait to have. And I think you've done really well. And it's interesting to hear about your family also having business that you might look into as well. Now, one thing I do like to ask about is major pivots or deviations that people have had in their, obviously, career plans, but also business plans or personal plans, about their personal progress. Like, have there been any particular times when you had to make a major pivot or a deviation from your existing plan? And how did you go about that? How did you recalibrate to the new circumstances? And what would you change about your experience looking back on it?
I've had a couple of those. Let's go with the one that's a little bit older. So right now I'm doing this dual degree program. But really when I decided that I wanted to do this idea of doing the dual degree wasn't something that I just decided when I decided to do my MBA. It came from even when I was in college, I would say, maybe last years of college. That's when I started thinking, okay, I want to do a dual degree from this very prestigious university. And I was, to be honest, obsessed with this program. And I thought, hey, one day I'm going to apply to this program and I'm going to do it and I'm going to be awesome. And I applied to that program. And it was in 2020. It was the first time that I applied to the program. I was invited to interview. It was also a dual degree, an MBA and a master's in engineering. I interviewed, I finished my interview. I don't think I did very well. I think it was maybe a month later, I received a letter saying, hey, you didn't make it. We're sorry to inform you that we cannot offer you a spot in our program. And I was like, okay, I didn't do it. Let's try next time. And next year, I try again. That time I said, okay, I'm not going to put all my eggs in the same basket. I'm going to apply to other programs that I really feel passionate about. And that's how I came to the University of Virginia program, the MBA and the MSDS. I'm a very curious person. And when something gets in my head, I really go really deep. So I started doing my research on both programs. Before even applying or knowing if I was going to get an interview or not, I was doing my list of reasons why I would prefer each program over the other. And when I was doing the reason for UVA, I could list like 5, 6, 7 reasons that were, in my opinion, very good reasons of why I would choose UVA over the other program. And when I was making the list for reasons for the other one, my main reason was because it's a very prestigious university. And that was my reason. I thought, okay, this other university is amazing. If I look at what my motivations are, I think I would lean towards UVA. But let's see what happens. So I applied to both programs. I was invited to interview to UVA. And I remember that the day I finished my interview, I opened my email and I had an email from the other university and it said, we regret to inform you that we will not be moving forward with an interview with you. So this program that I had been dreaming about for maybe 5 years, I ended up not going to that program. And really now, after having been here for a year at UVA, I wouldn't change anything. If I was given the choice to go to this other program or UVA, I would choose UVA. No doubt about that. Probably the same would be true if I had been in the other program. I think that's like bias of how we think, but I'm truly enjoying my time here. I think it's a great fit for me, this program. My takeaway from that situation was you don't need to get obsessed with an objective that you want, and not with a specific thing about that. So I was thinking that I really wanted to go into this program. Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice, yes, but it was more about the pursuit of the dual degree that I wanted. And if you have choices, it's going to make it easier. And something very similar just happened this summer to me. Before coming here to Darden, I was at EY Parthenon, which is a consulting firm. I did my internship here at EY Parthenon in the US with the advanced analytics team. And during my internship, I received great feedback. I mean, that the recruiting timeline for MBAs is a little bit weird because once you finish your summer internship, in about 2 weeks, you find out if you have a return offer for the next year or not. I knew this was going to be a hard year, like competitive year, but I thought, hey, I got really good feedback. I come from the same firm. I was doing work that very few people in the firm can do. I'm going to receive a return offer, but I didn't receive a return offer. So again, plans change and now I'm recruiting. Again, I think you need to have that time to feel, okay, it's not what I was expecting. I process that situation, but you need to move forward and you need to think, okay, what's my next plan? You cannot sit still and be sad about what happened. Like you need to have your time to process what happened, think about that, figure out what happened, if it was something related to performance or something that was, there are situations that you cannot control. And I think both of these situations, like the other program and my return offer, were situations that I could not have control. I did my best and there were circumstances that I couldn't control ultimately made this happen. And now I'm re-recruiting. I found amazing consulting firms that I'd love to work for. And I'm really excited about the prospect of working for other firm.
Wow. I love your answer, man. When you use the word obsession, that's one thing that drives us. It drives us to do anything to get there. But at the same time, you just say that, okay, you were obsessed with this, but it didn't work. So you go there and change your mindset and you get obsessed with a different thing, right? You change your objectives and that's entrepreneurship, man. Entrepreneurship is not about running a company. It's about the vision, the mindset. So I totally feel it when you say that you're obsessed with that objective and then you get there. Or if you don't, you get obsessed with a different thing. This is like a word that I haven't heard in a long time in an interview. And it was really nice to hear. I feel that this answer was already something in this direction, but we usually finish our interviews with some words of wisdom. I really want to know if you have some for us. Like it could be an advice from you or something you heard, you like it, and you can share with us. I think this is one of the most inspiring episodes. Even if you say that I'm not an entrepreneur, I don't own a company, but still, what you're saying is really valuable. And I appreciate that. So, do you have any words of wisdom for us?
Tough.
You've been giving out it without asking. Come on, man.
Something that I like really, and this was something that we used to say in my previous job. It was that proactivity, it's like a punishment. Being proactive means giving out good ideas. And when you tell someone a good idea, business, the answer can be, oh, that's a great idea. When can you have it ready? So you end up generating more work for yourself. I think that it's worth it. Just because it's gonna doing something means more work or being uncomfortable. I think it's usually worth it. And it's like those situations that can help you be different and separate yourself from the rest.
Absolutely. That's brilliant words of wisdom. Thank you so much, Mauricio. We really appreciate your thoughts and everything you've shared with us and taught us today. Of course, have a great day, evening, morning ahead of you, depending on where everyone is.
You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.